Impeccable timing is what all great guitarists have in common. It doesn't matter how fast you play, or even so much what you play, sloppy timing sticks out like a sore thumb, even to the casual listener. My aim in this series is to take you through the mechanics of good timing for lead playing, so even the simplest of licks and riffs will sound graceful and articulate. The most logical place to begin is to learn how notes are divided up and timed in a given rhythm. The duration of a note in a piece of music is measured using what is called a note value. Obviously, the notes in a given solo or riff can be, and usually are, different lengths, but they can be divided into several common values, which we'll learn in a moment. For these exercises, you'll need a metronome to help you keep time. You can find links to free online metronomes, as well as preset click and drum tracks on the lesson page. Or you can just do a simple web or app search. Set your metronome to 60 beats per minute. The BPM is known as tempo. The higher the BPM, the faster the tempo. Each click of the metronome represents a beat. We're going to number these beats in groupings of 4 as follows. This duration of 4 beats will be our measure or bar. So we have 4 beats per measure. The simplest application of this timing you'll hear on drums is the following. So the bass drum is kicked on beats 1 and 3, the strong beats. Chord changes most often occur on the first beat of a measure because it's the strongest accent beat. Songs also tend to begin and end on the first beat for the same reason. The snare is hit on beats 2 and 4, the weak beats. This is known as 4/4 time or common time. The top or first 4 represents the 4 beats per measure. We'll get to what the other 4 means later. Now, with guitar at the ready, we're going to pick one note, any note, on the first beat and hold it through the duration of the entire measure. So we're picking and holding one note every 4 beats. This is known as a whole note because it lasts for the whole of the measure. Whole notes will typically be played when you want to emphasize and draw out a note. As well as starting on the first beat, practice timing whole notes starting on other beats. For example, starting on the second beat. Exercises like this will help to calibrate your sense of timing, positioning notes in different places within the measure. Obviously, we'll be increasing the tempo at some point, but we'll come to that later. For even longer notes, we could use a double whole note, which lasts 2 measures. However, at slower tempos, such as 60 beats per minute, whole notes will most likely be our longest held notes. Now, you may be wondering what we'd call a note held for, say, a measure and a quarter or a measure and a half. We'll come to that in a later part. We're just focusing on the core note values for now. Continuing, what if we halved the length of our whole notes and picked and held one note every 2 beats instead of 4? We'd be playing half notes. Again, we should practice positioning these half notes on different beats. Halve the distance between notes again, and we get quarter notes. Halve the duration again, and we get eighth notes. We can use the word "and" to fill in the gaps between the beat numbers. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... With a typical 4/4 drum beat, you'll often hear the hi-hats hit on each eighth note. If you're using a plectrum, you should start alternate picking now to economize your pick hand movement. Eighth notes will be the most common timing for most players. They will give your phrases a running momentum, whereas quarter, half and whole notes will primarily be used to emphasize notes and punctuate phrases. For quicker runs, we'd use 16th notes, half the duration of eighth notes. When counting 16th notes, we tend to use the letters E and A, pronounced E and A, to fill in the gaps between beats. However, you likely won't count like this in your head. It's just a way to symbolize the note values. Make sure you can time 16th notes confidently, starting at a steady 60 beats per minute. So from whole to 16th notes, here's what we have so far. These note values represent the core timing around which most of your picking, including licks and riffs, will be based. Make sure you're confident with playing these note values using either a single note or playing through a scale, lick or riff you know. Once you're confident with playing these timings at 60 beats per minute, start notching up the metronome. I recommend increments of 10 BPM, only increasing the metronome when you can play flawlessly at the current tempo. This 10 BPM rule should be used when learning any scale, lick or riff to get up to speed. As you probably expect, 16th notes will become rather challenging as you reach higher tempos. But when you need to play 16th notes, just push it as far as you can go, again using the 10 BPM increment rule. Challenge yourself. The main thing is that you can differentiate these note values at different tempos by ear, without hesitation. The next stage is to practice combining note values within a sequence of measures. You can find exercises for this on the lesson page. Of course, there are many other timing elements we can inject into our phrases to make them more dynamic and interesting. So in the next part, we'll look at ways we can combine note values to bring our solos and riffs to life. Cheers.